Greetings. This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. This is part 2 of chapter 7 of my book, Awakening Love. True riches are to be had when you stop doing what the ego does and live as I did, if only because life will be so much easier. Put love first. Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added unto you. When you put first things first, life becomes so much easier and happier, and likely more abundant. Who is this you that the ego is trying to make superior? It's just an assortment of ideas about who you are. So much suffering and pain just to uphold an idea about yourself. This is wasted energy. How much happier and easier your life can be when you invest your energy in reality, in experiencing life just as it is, enjoying it, and flowing with it instead of arguing with it and bucking the river. A river is the perfect metaphor for describing the difference between the ego's way of being and love's. Life is the river that carries you downstream, through all its twists and turns. As you travel down the river, you can like it or not, be happy or not, tell a sad story or not, be mad or not. The journey is still the same journey, but your experience of it will be very different depending on your internal state. You can also either paddle with the river or buck it and try to go upstream. That's your choice, and depending on what you choose, your experience will be very different. You've been given free will. You can choose the ego's perceptions of not good enough and I don't like, or your divine self's, which loves and embraces whatever's happening. You can be the happy traveler or the unhappy traveler. You're free to choose how you'll be on the journey, but not taking the journey and not experiencing whatever's part of the journey is not an option. How much better it is to accept the journey you're on. Your ego thinks it can shape the river and the journey to its liking, and that mistaken belief is the cause of much suffering. You have only so much control over the life you're given. But fortunately, something very wise and good is in control. When you see the truth, that life is the way it is, and that it is a gift just as it is, then you can relax and enjoy the ride, even the rapids and the twists and turns. On this journey, you'll discover that you've been given all the courage, strength, patience, and wisdom you need. And you're not alone on this journey. Many unseen helpers and friends are accompanying you as well. When you see life through your divine self's eyes, life is divine. But when you see life through the ego's eyes, you suffer. Once you realize this, you're free to choose how you will perceive life. This is the gift of free will. Eventually, everyone comes to see life through the eyes of love. You are being given the gift of the truth now, so that must mean you're ready for it. All that's left is for you to exercise your free will to choose against the programming, against the path of least resistance. All that's left is for you to choose love in every moment as best you can. So far, I've given you 3 things to look out for and give up to help you move out of the egoic state of consciousness: judgments, comparisons, and uninformed opinions. These include shoulds, should-nots, could-haves, and better than and less than. These words are warning flags that you're caught in the ego's perceptions. Other words that trap you in the egoic state of consciousness are I like, I don't like, I want, and I don't want. These words indicate desires and preferences that keep you tied to the roller coaster of feelings generated by the ego. If you're experiencing what you like or what you want, you're happy. If you aren't happy. Meanwhile, life is whatever it is, while the ego is labeling it good or bad, desirable or undesirable. Those labels determine whether you're happy going down the river or not. Without those labels, you're just having the experience of going down the river and responding to each twist and turn as it occurs, using all the God-given resources you have at your disposal. With these few very powerful words, I like, I don't like, I want, I don't want, all emotions are created. When life doesn't match your likes and wants, you feel sad, angry, unhappy, discontent, disappointed, jealous, envious, resentful, or fearful. If you didn't hold your preferences and desires as meaningful and important, if you didn't believe them, you would feel none of these feelings. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with your desires or these feelings, and you aren't entirely in control of whether they arise or not. It's human to have desires and feelings like these, because it's human to have an ego. However, your destiny as a human being is to transcend your ego and become a Christed or enlightened human being, which is someone who sees the truth about life and the truth about desires and feelings. The truth is that it's possible to have desires and feelings, but not be had by them. It's even possible to get to a place where you're experiencing very few desires and negative feelings. To become free of suffering, here's what you need to know. Your likes and wants keep you in a state of unnecessary suffering and at a distance from love, for you can't be experiencing the negative feelings that result from your desires and be experiencing love. These are two different states of consciousness, the egoic state and the kingdom of heaven. To move into the state where love abides, you must see the truth about these thoughts. I want, I don't want, I like, and I don't like. The truth is that they're lies. They're made up. By whom? By the programming. They are what all human beings generally like and don't like, and want and don't want. The problem is that your ego's desires are irrelevant to what life with a capital L wants. Life's desires, thy will, trump your ego's will when these are in conflict. The way you discover what life wants is by noticing what's coming out of the flow. Whatever is what life wants, and happiness lies in desiring that, while suffering lies in desiring anything other than that. Life is as it is. Sometimes you like it, and sometimes you don't, but that doesn't change a thing. I can't say this enough, because it really seems to you that your desires matter, like they somehow have the power to change what is. But it's too late to change what is. I'm not saying you can't change something in the future by taking steps to do that. You can take steps to change things going forward, but you can't change what already is by not liking it and wanting it to be different. Your desires have no impact on the present moment except to make you discontent with it. Forgive me, please, for repeating myself, but I do so because the programming is broken down through repetition. Human beings believe what they hear repeatedly, which is one of the reasons you believe what's in your head. The voice in your head and other people's voices in their heads have repeated things to you so often that you're convinced that these lies and half-truths are true. So bear with me as I repeat something else. No one can do this work for you. Only you can neutralize the thoughts in your head by seeing their falseness and turning away from them, by choosing to give your attention to reality instead, to what you're actually experiencing here and now. What is your body experiencing? What intuitions, motivations, and inspirations, if any, are arising? What are you moved to do or not do? Is it time to do something, or time to rest and just be? The answers to these questions are easy enough to ascertain, but you have to want to look in this direction. You have to want to be present to life. To get to this place, two things are necessary. First, you have to have fallen out of love with the voice in your head, because you've seen how untrue and unhelpful it is and what it does to your life. Second, you have to have realized that the present moment is sweet and has the answers to how to live your life. The kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth, and people do not see it. A life of beauty and delight is awaiting you if you but give your attention to the life you're given in this moment, rather than to an imaginary life you wish you had. You will know when you've entered the kingdom of heaven, when you feel this delight and the simple joy of just being. The path of love requires that you practice doing the opposite of what the ego does. This often amounts to simply not doing something you usually do, such as complain. Every time you forego the usual complaints, gossip, bragging, judging, and comparisons that the ego so readily engages in, the tendency to do these things is weakened. Notice the desire to complain, gossip, brag, judge, or whatever your ego especially likes doing, and just say no. Instead of acting on it, don't. Then notice what that's like to not have indulged in that. You just made your relationships and your life better. You just made it easier to love yourself and others, and for others to love you. What is it that can be aware, stop, and not do what you usually do? That is the you that is waking up from the egoic programming. You are waking up. You are becoming more aware, and that awareness can only lead to more and more awareness and awakeness. You are on your way to becoming a living master. Once you step on the path of love, you are rewarded by love with every step you take, and taking those steps will become easier and easier. Once you stop behaving like the unloving ego and stop believing that's who you are, you'll discover how easy it is to love yourself and love life. What a wonderful discovery to realize that you are goodness incarnate. When you steadfastly walk this path, that is what you discover. So allow me to make some suggestions that will help you become more firmly established on this path. The first one is to replace complaints, desires, and anything else that steals your happiness with a practice of noticing what you're grateful for. The instruction I gave you earlier was to not do what the ego does. A practice of gratitude makes this much easier to do because it gives you something else to do in place of what you usually do. For instance, if your ego wants to complain about having to walk the dog, remind yourself how grateful you are to be able to walk, and how grateful you are to have time to walk, or how good this is for you, or how wonderful you'll feel afterwards, or how happy your dog will be. Focus on what is good and positive about what is, rather than on what you don't like or what you wish were different. You can always find things to appreciate about the present moment. The ego is in the habit of focusing on its desires rather than on what is good and beautiful about the way things are here and now. It overlooks and takes for granted what it has and focuses on what it doesn't have, as if that is the key to happiness, when it's just the opposite. There is always something to be happy about. The ego might argue with that, but the divine self is simply happy to be alive, to exist. That is enough. And existing truly is enough to be happy. Happiness is just a matter of lowering the bar. When you sit very quietly and just experience your beingness, you will eventually feel the peace, joy, and contentment of your true self. These wonderful feelings are there, and they're always there. You can learn to bring these feelings to the forefront. The more time you spend being present, the more you'll experience peace, love, and joy as your foreground, and the complaining, discontent mind in the background. Another suggestion for when you find yourself caught up in the ego is to breathe more deeply and slowly for a few minutes. This will shift your consciousness more easily than anything else. Please do not underestimate the power of breathing slowly and deeply to change you from the inside out. Doing this will help you see things more positively. So if you're having difficulty with the gratitude practice, take a few slow, deep breaths first, and then look around and count your blessings. Look out onto the world with fresh eyes that are full of gratitude, which see beauty everywhere. Your divine self is in love with life and in love with seeing, hearing, feeling, and experiencing. The egoic state of consciousness dulls the experience of real life, but without the overlay of the ego's desires and unhappiness, real life is wondrous, beautiful, rich, vibrant, and alive. Those of you who meditate know what I'm talking about. Those of you who don't will find out if you commit yourself to meditation over a period of time. There is a whole new world out there, a whole new way of experiencing the world, awaiting you once you turn away from the imaginary you and begin experiencing life from your divine self's perspective. Thank you for being here. I am with you always.